Radio Atlanta, welcome to our weekly program, Discussion, where we delve into ideas, creativity, and innovation. Today, we spotlight the prolific work of Sarwat Parvez, a distinguished author from Maryland, USA. With over 75 books to his name, Sarwat Parvez has left an indelible mark on the literary world. And we're here to analyze the standard and impact of his published works critically. Additionally, we'll explore his newly launched website, tespikma.com, a platform that promises to expand access to his rich body of work and engage readers with fresh insights. And consider how his contributions resonate in today's literary landscape. Stay tuned for an engaging and thought-provoking discussion.
All right, so get this. We're diving deep today into the works of an author, and their name is, it's Sarwat Parvez. Or maybe it's Parvs or Brarb or even Parvez. I mean, the sources even spell their name like a bunch of different ways.
Well, that's wild, right?
Yeah, and get this. This author has written 75 books.
75?
Yep, 75. And that's not even the craziest part. We're talking about books on, like, history and horror, politics, religion, even medical mycology.
Medical what?
Mycology. It's the study of fungi.
Oh, wow. Okay. So this author really jumps around between topics, huh?
That's what we're here to find out, right?
Yeah.
What kind of mind can produce such a range? It's like they're saying, pick a topic, any topic, and I've probably written a book about it.
And they don't just skim the surface either, right?
Yeah.
From what I'm seeing in these video clips and transcripts about their website launch, they go deep into some complex stuff.
Let's start with this whole name mystery. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, most authors, they stick with one name. But Sarwat's like playing by their own rules here. What do you think? Secret identities for different genres?
Maybe right. I mean, think about it. If you were writing about like the history of banking and then also writing, chilling ghost stories, you might want to keep those worlds separate.
Exactly. And speaking of separate worlds, this website, it's not just a website, is it? They keep calling it like a portal.
Yeah. tspkaa.com, or maybe it's tspea.com.
See what I mean about the variations?
That's pretty strange.
But the word portal, though, it's like stepping into Narnia, but for knowledge. Are you ready to go on this journey?
Let's do it.
Okay, so where does this journey take us first?
Well, one of the big themes that jumps out is history, right? We've got titles like History of Coins and Trades and History of Banking.
Okay, so not exactly light beach reads.
No, but I bet there are some fascinating stories hidden there, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And it's interesting how this author, Parvez, seems to blend that academic kind of rigorous research with a sense of mystery.
Oh. Yeah, you see titles like those, but right alongside those, you've got Mysteries of Ancient China, Mysteries of Siberia, and then there's one called The Mysterious Empty Desert of Saudi Arabia.
It's like Indiana Jones, but with books.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got coins and trades, but then we've also got lost cities and ancient secrets. What's in that empty desert? Is it really empty? What do you think?
I don't know, but Parvez seems to be hinting at something more going on there.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's just the history section. Get ready, because we're about to enter the realm of haunted houses, creepy hotels, things that go bump in the night.
Oh, boy.
This author does not shy away from the spooky stuff at all.
Well, let's hear it.
Okay, so we've got Haunted World Stories Revised, and then there's a whole series on haunted places and horror stories, and those focus on the USA and even Albania. Plus, there's even a book simply called Haunted Places.
So they really like haunted places, huh?
It seems like this author knows where all the skeletons are buried, literally and figuratively.
It makes you wonder what draws us to these types of stories, right? The creepy ones. Is the thrill, the desire to see something beyond reality, or maybe something deeper, like a way to face our own mortality, our fears of the unknown.
Okay, well, before we get too existential here, let's shift gears to something a bit more, well, maybe grounded. We're going to talk politics now.
Okay.
And this author does not hold back, especially when it comes to one of the most controversial topics of our time, the U.S. and Israel relationship.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the book is even titled U.S. and Israel Relationship, Beneficial or Harmful. Talk about cutting to the chase.
No kidding.
Yeah.
The sources say Parvez actually dives into a specific part of the whole thing that's often overlooked in the media, the debate over settlements in the West Bank. That's a major sticking point in negotiations and a source of constant controversy.
Wow, I can see how that would be overlooked. It's like a tiny detail that has a big impact.
That's out.
And it's not just international relations either. There's also postmortem of democracy, which sounds a little ominous, and USA presidential election system, pros and cons. In a world with so much, disinformation online. It's like they're holding up a mirror to our current political reality and asking us some tough questions.
Have you ever felt like democracy is on life support?
You know, I have.
It seems like this author really wants us to think about it.
It's like they're examining the building blocks of our society and asking if they're still strong.
It's fascinating how Parvez goes from these huge political topics to really specific systems.
It's like they're saying, here's how things work, but are they working the way they should?
Okay, well, from the political battlefield to the microscopic world of fungi, this is where I get really curious. We've got titles like Morphological Guide of Human and Animal Pathogenic Fungi and Molecular Diagnosis of Fungal Diseases from Clinical Samples.
Fungi, really?
Who knew fungi could be so dramatic?
You know, most people don't realize how serious fungal diseases actually are.
But this author, Parvez, is an expert in the field, and they shed light on this often overlooked area of science. It's like, what else are we missing? What other unseen worlds are right there under our noses?
Okay. I'm officially creeped out and intrigued. At the same time, Parvez, you are a puzzle I want to solve, but we're just getting started. There's so much more to unpack, from spiritual journeys to strange hotels, and even maybe some unseen enemies lurking in the shadows. So stay with us as we keep going on this deep dive into the mind of Sarwat Parvez. We'll be right back after a quick break.
Welcome back. You know, we've only just started to uncover this author's amazing work.
It's true. It's like we're putting together a giant jigsaw puzzle, right? One book at a time.
Yeah.
And we've got some pretty interesting pieces to look at now. And speaking of puzzles, that book about the U.S. and Israel relationship, it's really stuck with me. U.S. and Israel relationship, beneficial or harmful? It's such a big question.
It is. And, you know, the sources say Parvez looks at specific historical events, things that aren't always talked about in the media. For example, they explore the 1967 Six-Day War and how it impacted the region long term.
Oh, yeah. I remember learning about that in school, but I never thought about the consequences way down the line, you know?
Yeah.
It makes me want to actually read Parvez's take. It's like they're saying to understand the present, you have to understand the past.
Right. And speaking of complex things, let's talk more about Post-Mortem of Democracy. That title is kind of scary, especially these days. Don't you think?
Yeah, it's like they're asking us to examine society. Are we really living in a time where democracy is in danger?
Well, the sources mention Parvez looks at something called manufactured consent, like how the media and propaganda can be used to change what people think and undermine democracy.
That hits close to home, doesn't it? I mean, think about all the information and misinformation we see every day online.
It's hard to even know what to believe.
It really is. It's scary how easily we can be influenced. I know I've fallen for fake news before, so how do we know what's real? Maybe Parvez has some ideas.
It seems like they want us to think critically, to question everything we see and hear.
Which is a good transition to their book about the U.S. presidential election system. USA presidential election system. Pros and cons. I'm guessing they don't try to make it sound better than it is.
Probably not.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You know, that book reminds me of something my grandfather said once. He really believes in American democracy, but even he says there are flaws.
It makes you wonder what those flaws are.
Right. It's great that Parvez looks at this directly, shows us the good and the bad, and lets us decide what we think.
It's like they're saying, here's the system, good and bad. Now you figure out what you think about it.
That's pretty cool.
It is empowering.
Okay, well, we've talked about some serious topics, so how about we go back to those spooky stories? Let's dive into those haunted hotels now. What do you think?
All right, let's do it.
I'm picturing dusty chandeliers, cobwebs everywhere, and maybe even a ghost or two. Strange hotels of the world with strange love and horror stories. The title itself makes you want to know more, right? But what I find really fascinating is how Parvez connects these stories to bigger ideas about being human.
Oh, that's interesting. How so? How do ghost stories connect to human experience?
Well, one source said Parvez talks about how haunted places can be like stores of memories. They hold on to bits of the past and the emotions from those times. It's like these stories help us understand our own history, both personal and as a society.
Wow, I never thought about it that way. So it's not just about being scared. It's about the power of the past and how it affects us today. That makes those Horror States of America books even more interesting now.
For sure. It's like Parvez is saying, hey, America is more than just Disneyland and beaches. There's a lot of history here. Some of it pretty dark that we don't always look at.
You know, that reminds me of this time I stayed in this old inn in New England. It was definitely creepy, and I kept thinking about all the people who had been there before me. It was like I could feel their energy.
And that's the feeling Parvez gets across in their writing. It's about noticing the things that shape our lives, even if we can't see them, whether it's history or something a little more ghostly.
Which brings us back to unseen enemies. We talked about that with politics, but it feels like it runs through all of Parviz's work. Even the ghost stories. Remember that book about hatred being like a virus?
Yeah.
It's like they're saying that hate is one of the most dangerous things we face because it spreads without us always seeing it and causes so much damage.
It's a scary thought, right?
Yeah.
Especially when there's so much division in the world.
It's like a warning that we have to be careful.
And, it's not just threats from outside.
Yeah.
Parvez also talks about the unseen enemies we have inside ourselves, like fear and greed and ignorance.
Wow. It's like they're saying the real battle is happening in our own minds. That's really deep.
It is. And that's what makes Parvez so interesting. They make us look inside ourselves and at the world and examine what we believe.
We've covered a lot, but there's still so much more to explore. We've got medical mycology and spiritual journeys. We've only just scratched the surface of this author's work.
It's true. There are so many layers to uncover in Parvez's writing.
We've only just begun to see the hidden depths of this whole literary universe. Stay with us for the last part of our deep dive, where we'll try to put all these pieces together and see what connects them all. Okay. So welcome back to the final part of our deep dive. It feels like we've been on this epic journey through the mind of Sarwat Parvez.
I know, right? We've covered so much, from those ancient mysteries to haunted hotels, political analysis, and even that microscopic world of fungi.
And speaking of fungi, I'm ready to tackle that mycology mystery. You know, when I first saw titles like Morphological Guide of Human and Animal Pathogenic Fungi and Molecular Diagnosis of Fungal Diseases from Clinical Samples, I thought, oh, this is where I get lost.
I get it, but Parvez has this way of making even the most complicated stuff seem interesting.
True. And, one source even mentioned that Parvez changes how we think about fungi. Like, instead of just seeing them as gross or something that makes us sick, they say fungi are super important to the ecosystem and that even affect how humans act in some crazy ways.
Oh yeah, I remember reading about this fungus that infects ants and controls their brains and basically turns them into zombies. I bet Parvez talks about that in their books.
Okay, now I'm actually kind of fascinated. It's like a real-life sci-fi movie happening right under our feet. Who knew fungi could be so dramatic?
Right, it makes you realize how much we still don't know about nature. Even the tiniest things can have a big impact.
Okay, so from the tiny world of fungi, let's move on to something bigger, spirituality. We know Parvez has written about different religions, including Echoes of Faith, A Journey Through Islamic History, and Vanishing of Buddhism from India.
One of the sources mentioned that Parvez traveled for years and really got to know different cultures and religions. So it's not just like reading facts from a textbook. It's like they're sharing their own experiences.
I've always wondered what happened to Buddhism in India. It started there, but then it disappeared. It seems strange, right?
Yeah, it does. Parvez talks about a few reasons, like wars happening, the rise of other religions, even disagreements within Buddhism itself. It's a complicated story. But I'm sure Parvez explains it in a way that makes sense.
And what about that book, Way to Heaven? Does Parvez give us directions to the afterlife?
Probably not that simple.
Yeah.
But I bet they talk about how different religions see what happens after we die. It's like asking the question, what happens after we die? And looking at all the different ways people have tried to answer it.
That's a question I've been thinking about a lot lately, especially after my grandmother passed away last year. Maybe Parvez has some insights, even if it's just saying that we don't have all the answers.
That's something I've noticed in Parvez's writing. They're okay with not knowing everything. They say the more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know.
It's like they're saying it's okay to not know everything. Learning is a journey that never really ends. So as we wrap up our deep dive, what if we learned about Sarwat Parvez? They're obviously super smart. They know a lot about so many things: history, science, politics, religion, even ghosts.
Yeah, and they're a great storyteller. They can take all that complicated stuff and make it fun to learn about.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing is they make us want to learn more. They want us to ask questions and explore and never stop learning.
I hope that's what people take away from this episode. Be curious about the world, and don't be afraid to learn about things, even if they seem hard at first.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to try new things. Who knows what you might discover? You might end up traveling through time, meeting ghosts, or even getting to know some mind-controlling fungi. Just like Sarwat Parvez.
That's a great way to put it. And remember, this is just the beginning. There are 75 books out there waiting for you. Each one is a chance to discover something new. So go out there and start your own adventure.
Well said. And hey, maybe we'll do another deep dive sometime. Until then, happy reading.